Imagine a place where mothers and daughters share the same husband, where traffic jams seem endless and traditions run so deep they're hard to believe. This is Bangladesh, a country of striking contrasts, fierce survival, and a vibrant spirit that often goes unnoticed. Beneath its surface of chaos lies a world of strength, resilience, and untold stories that will make you see the world in a whole new light. Ready to dive in? But wait, before we dive fully into this, take 2 seconds and subscribe to this channel so you don't miss out on our future amazing content. And hit the like button. 9 weird things only in Bangladesh. The worst country where a mother and daughter share a husband. 1. Child marriage. A painful reality. In the heart of Bangladesh, child marriage is more than just an unfortunate statistic. It's an unshakable tradition that robs girls of their childhoods and their futures. Imagine being 12 years old, filled with the dreams of playing with friends, exploring the world, and maybe becoming a doctor or a teacher someday. But for many girls in Bangladesh, that dream is a distant fantasy. Instead, they are married off to much older men, often as young as 30 or 40 years old, before they've even had a chance to experience the simplest joys of youth. For these girls, life is an endless cycle of chores, motherhood, and a loss of freedom. Their laughter fades as they step into homes where they are expected to cook, clean, and bear children, before they've even learned what it means to be a child. Some are forced to become mothers at the tender age of 14, their tiny bodies ill-prepared for childbirth, leading to life-threatening complications. Others are subjected to domestic violence, often with nowhere to turn for help. In a society where the voices of girls are silenced, these young brides grow up with little agency or hope for change. Child marriage in Bangladesh isn't just an isolated issue. It's part of a larger cycle of poverty, illiteracy, and lack of opportunity. It's a trap that keeps girls from reaching their full potential and robs them of a chance to change the course of their lives. The tradition is deeply embedded in the culture, with some families believing it's the only way to protect their daughter's honor and ensure their survival in a harsh world. But for the girls themselves, this protection feels like a prison, and their struggle for freedom is one that is often invisible to the outside world. 2. Widows forced to marry their daughters' husbands. In the Mandi tribe of Bangladesh, life is dictated by ancient customs, some of which are so shocking they seem almost impossible to fathom. One of the most disturbing practices involves widows who are expected to marry their daughters' husbands after the death of their own spouses. The tradition goes like this. When a man dies, his widow is expected to remarry to one of his younger, unmarried relatives, often the very same man who was married to her daughter. Imagine the emotional toll this would take. A mother who has already lost her partner in life must now reconcile the idea of becoming the wife of the man who was once like a son to her, the man who was once her daughter's love. This custom is carried out with a sense of obligation, and the mother and daughter must quietly accept it, without protest, without choice. It's a deeply ingrained norm that is hard to escape, and for many women, it is not just a duty but a matter of survival. For the daughters, this tradition can feel like an unbearable betrayal. They are forced to navigate the painful reality of watching their mother, someone they once confided in, become the partner of their own husband. It is a scenario where love, loyalty, and trust are broken down into rigid, unquestionable roles. The emotional scars left by this custom are deep, and the cycle continues from generation to generation, leaving women to carry the weight of both grief and responsibility. For these communities, the practice is more than just a tradition. It's a cultural survival mechanism that binds their social fabric, no matter the emotional cost. 3. The struggles of women and political power. In a country like Bangladesh, where women are often expected to stay within the confines of home and hearth, it is nothing short of extraordinary to see women rise to positions of power. For decades, women in Bangladesh have faced the daunting pressure to depend on their husbands for financial security, social standing, and even their very identity. Yet, despite these challenges, there are women who have defied the odds and broken the barriers that society has set for them. Take Khalida Zia, for example, a woman who became the first female Prime Minister of Bangladesh in 1991. Despite the constant societal pressure to conform to traditional roles, Zia refused to stay silent. She became a political force to be reckoned with, navigating a male-dominated world of politics to break into the halls of power. Her rise was not without immense personal sacrifice. Her political career came at a time when the country was torn by military coups and political unrest, and her leadership was often met with resistance, even from those closest to her. But Zia's determination showed that women could lead, even in a country that often silenced their voices. Today, Bangladesh's Prime Minister is Sheikh Hasina, the daughter of the country's founding leader, who continues the legacy of female political power in the nation. Like Zia, Hasina faced immense challenges throughout her life, from surviving an assassination attempt to enduring years of exile. Yet, she stands tall as one of the most powerful women in South Asia, a symbol of resilience and political mastery. Her leadership has propelled Bangladesh forward, despite the constant societal pressure to curb her influence and potential. But the struggles don't end with these women. For every woman who has made it to the top, there are thousands more who still face the brutal realities of gender inequality. Women in rural areas, for instance, struggle to be heard, often facing physical and emotional abuse, while simultaneously bearing the weight of household responsibilities. Yet the rise of women like Zia and Hasina proves that there is hope, that change is possible, even in the most challenging circumstances. 4. The complex reality of prostitution. In Bangladesh, prostitution is legal, a stark contrast to how the rest of the world views it. While some might see this as a form of freedom or choice, the truth behind this practice is much darker and far more complicated. The reality is that nearly 100,000 women and girls are involved in this industry, but only a small fraction of them choose this life willingly. Most are trapped, sold into the trade by desperate families, coerced by husbands, or even trafficked by strangers who prey on their vulnerability. Imagine being a young girl, only 14 or 15, with your future ahead of you, yet finding yourself in a brothel, unable to escape. This is the painful truth for countless women who end up on the streets or in brothels, often with no way out. Many are forced into sex work by circumstances beyond their control, poverty, broken families, or even the lure of false promises from traffickers offering a better life in the city. When you hear that 90% of those working in prostitution in Bangladesh didn't choose this path, it becomes clear that what appears to be an industry of choice is in fact an ecosystem of exploitation. Shockingly, the legal framework fails to protect these women. With a human trafficking conviction rate of less than 1%, most of the perpetrators, those who exploit the most vulnerable, escape justice without consequence. They continue their horrific work, trafficking young girls into unimaginable conditions, all while the legal system struggles to catch up. This isn't just a tragedy for those directly involved. It's a systemic failure that perpetuates an ongoing cycle of abuse and exploitation. In a world where justice feels out of reach, the fight to end human trafficking becomes not only a moral obligation but a desperate necessity. 5. A city like no other. Dhaka's chaos. Now picture Dhaka, the capital of Bangladesh, a place where 17 million people live, breathe, and try to survive in an ever-crowded city. As the largest and most congested city in the country, its streets are an overwhelming sight, a sprawling maze of movement where the word chaos doesn't even begin to cover it. Imagine standing in the middle of the road and watching as an old creaky bus lumbers past, the exhaust pipe belching thick clouds of black smoke that coat your skin. People are everywhere, packed tightly into rickshaws, tuk-tuks, and cars, with no real room to breathe. Even the sky seems too small to fit all the activity that happens below. And when traffic slows to a crawl, as it often does, the frustration is palpable. It's not uncommon to see passengers hanging out of bus windows, clinging to the edges of buses or tuk-tuks just to get a few extra inches of space. There are people who cling to the roofs of buses, balancing precariously as they ride, barely a hair's breadth from falling. This isn't some one-off situation. It's an everyday occurrence. And when it rains, which it often does during the monsoon season, the streets are transformed into rivers of muck, further slowing down already paralyzed traffic. The potholes seem to swallow up entire vehicles, and drivers seem more like sailors navigating a storm rather than simply getting from one place to another. This is Dhaka, a city where personal space is a luxury few can afford. And yet, amidst the noise, the pollution, and the constant rush of life, the people of Dhaka continue to fight for their place in the world. In the midst of this chaos, they find moments of peace, even if they only last a few minutes before the next wave of madness hits. It's a city where survival means adapting to the madness, where resilience is forged in the fires of traffic jams and overcrowded spaces, and where every single person becomes part of the pulse that drives this unstoppable metropolis. But wait, before we dive fully into this, take 2 seconds and subscribe to this channel so you don't miss out on our future amazing content. And hit the like button. 6. Bangladesh's unbelievable train system. If you think the chaos of Dhaka's streets is a lot to handle, just wait until you see the train system. In a country where roads are often overcrowded and traffic feels never-ending, trains serve as the lifeblood of daily commutes for millions of people. But these trains are far from safe, and what seems like a simple ride to work can turn into an ordeal. Trains in Bangladesh travel at a speed that feels more like a slow crawl, around 27 miles per hour. But for the people on board, it's not about speed. It's about survival. Each day, thousands of commuters cram into trains that were never designed to hold such numbers. People don't just sit quietly in their seats. They climb onto the roofs, they hang from the sides, and they risk their lives simply to get from one place to another. Imagine looking out the window of a moving train, only to see people hanging from the doors and climbing up the railings. This isn't some rare sight, it's the norm. But the dangers aren't just limited to the risk of falling. In a heart-stopping incident, 30 people fell from the roof of a train as it passed under low-hanging trees, their bodies slamming into branches before hitting the ground below. And that's not even the worst of it. In another tragedy, 2 people were electrocuted after coming into contact with live power lines while traveling on top of the train. The power lines, which were meant to keep the trains moving, instead became silent killers for the desperate commuters. The train system in Bangladesh is more than just an unreliable mode of transportation. It's a symbol of the risks people are willing to take just to survive, to provide for their families, and to try to escape the crushing poverty that dominates so many lives in this country. For many, these trains represent more than just a means to get from home to work. They are a lifeline. But that lifeline is dangerous, precarious, and fraught with peril. The system is overburdened, underfunded, and poorly maintained, yet millions rely on it every single day. The train rides are more than just commutes. They're a daily reminder of how much people will endure, how much risk they'll take, and how little they have in terms of options. 7. A nation of spices and street food. In Bangladesh, food isn't just something you eat. It's a deep connection to tradition, culture, and the rhythms of life. Picture this. The sun is barely rising, and the streets are already alive with the sizzling sounds of street vendors preparing breakfast. For most Bangladeshis, the day begins with pantabat, fermented rice that's left overnight in water, giving it a sour, tangy taste that's unlike anything you've experienced before. To outsiders, it may seem strange or unappealing, but for those who grew up with it, it's comfort food, a reminder of home, of family, and of long mornings spent at the table, sharing stories with loved ones. As the day progresses, the bustling food scene only intensifies. Around 2 p.m., lunch is served, a hearty, slow-cooked dal made from lentils, spiced with turmeric, cumin, and garlic. The aroma wafts through the streets as people gather at small roadside shops to slurp down their bowls, savoring the rich, warm flavors. Dal is more than a meal. It's a daily ritual, a way for the Bangladeshi people to refuel and connect with their roots. But dinner, dinner is where the magic happens. As the evening sky turns dark, families settle down for a meal that feels like a celebration of life itself. A simple bowl of rice and milk. To the untrained eye, it might seem like an odd, almost childlike combination. But for Bangladeshis, it's a nostalgic reminder of the days when milk was a luxury and rice was the heart of every meal. It's a soothing, comforting dish that signifies home, warmth, and the end of a long day. And then there's the spice. Bangladesh is the birthplace of the notorious bhut holokia pepper, one of the hottest chilies in the world. Imagine taking a bite of a chili that's 1,000 times hotter than a bell pepper. It's so fiery, it feels like swallowing a flame that burns through your throat and ignites your senses. For many, it's an essential part of every meal, used to spice up everything from curries to chutneys. It's not just about the heat, it's about resilience, about pushing through the burn, and experiencing the thrill of spice that's as wild and untamed as the country itself. 8. The Shaka family, living without fingerprints. In a world where fingerprints are our identity, imagine a life where yours simply don't exist. This is the reality for the Shaka family from the northern Rahi district of Bangladesh, whose members have been born without fingerprints due to a rare genetic condition known as dermatoglyphia. For 4 generations, this family has faced challenges that most of us would never even think about. The simple act of unlocking a door or logging into a phone becomes an impossible task. Without fingerprints, they can't use the most basic form of personal identification, leaving them shut out from many aspects of modern life. For example, try buying a phone or opening a bank account when you can't provide fingerprints. Try traveling internationally when your passport doesn't match the usual identification checks. The Shaka family has had to navigate a world that's built around systems of identification that don't accommodate their condition. They found themselves in a constant battle with bureaucracy, relying on old-fashioned documents, certificates, and endless paperwork just to get by. Despite these obstacles, the Shaka family has lived on, quietly making their way through a society that often overlooks them. Their story is one of resilience, of adapting to a world that wasn't designed for them, and of the deep human need to connect with others, even when the system tells them they don't fit in. It's a reminder that the world isn't always as accommodating as we'd like it to be, and that some people live lives of quiet struggle, with challenges that seem unimaginable to the rest of us. 9. Bangladesh's fashion industry, the hidden cost. Bangladesh has earned its place on the global map as the world's second-largest exporter of garments. The factories here hum with activity, producing clothes for top global brands. Think H&M, Zara, and many others, helping fuel the fashion industry's billion-dollar empire. Every shirt, every dress, every pair of jeans that hits the shelves of Western stores has likely been stitched together by the hands of someone working in one of Bangladesh's garment factories. The industry is vast, employing millions of people and contributing immensely to the country's economy. But there's a hidden side to this success story, a side that the glossy advertisements and runway shows never show you. The reality for many garment workers is one of long hours, grueling conditions, and unbelievably low wages. While factories may churn out billions of dollars in profits every year, many of the workers, predominantly women, earn less than $100 a month. Their days are spent hunched over sewing machines, often in poorly ventilated rooms, surrounded by the hum of machines and the smell of fabric. There are no insurance policies, no paid leave, and no contracts to protect them. And then there's the danger. The Rana Plaza disaster in 2013, when a factory building collapsed and killed over 1,100 workers, serves as a chilling reminder of the deadly cost of cheap labor. The factory was known to be structurally unsound, Yet the workers were forced to continue working, even after cracks appeared in the walls. When the building finally collapsed, it was a devastating blow, not only to the families of the victims, but also to the entire world, forcing us to confront the uncomfortable truth about the cost of fast fashion. Yet despite these dangers, the industry continues to thrive. Workers are often trapped, unable to leave due to a lack of alternative opportunities, and some of the biggest brands in the world continue to outsource the production to Bangladesh, turning a blind eye to the human cost behind their clothing. It's a painful paradox. The garments we wear, often seen as symbols of style and status, are tainted by the suffering of the people who make them. In conclusion, Bangladesh is a country full of contradictions, beautiful yet heartbreaking, ancient yet modern, struggling yet resilient. The stories of its people are ones of hardship and strength, showing us a side of the world that's rarely seen. It's a place where life is challenging, but people rise above it with remarkable courage. This country has much to teach us about perseverance, survival, and the power of tradition in an ever-changing world. Let us have your thoughts in the comment section below. Thank you for joining us. If you found this information enlightening, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more insightful content about cities and cultures from around the world.